Hi, Kevin.
Hello,
Good to
Doctor.
see you.
Good
Good
to
to
see you
see
too.
you. I wanted to chat with you as I was chatting before to share the genesis of our discussion will be on providing authors, new and aspiring authors, with ideas and tips beyond writing. I'm thinking of persons who write and run. That's what I personally call it, write and run. So you write and run or publish and run. You publish your book and then you run away to the next project without basically marketing it or seeing how you could unfold into other areas. Now, you're a little bit non-traditional in the sense that you're a filmmaker. And as a part of the South Florida writers group or writers group of South Florida, what we do have some filmmakers in the group as well who are mainly based on Comic Con and that kind of, what you call it, animated
Mm,
video making and stuff like that. But I wanted to hear from you from a different perspective in terms of the documentary um, craft that you do and how we can give some tips to our authors within our group. So as we progress, I'm not going to introduce you because we're going to find out a lot about you as we discuss the questions that I'm going to ask you to
sure, sure,
understand who you are and what you do. Yes?
sure. No problem.
Okay, perfect. So I'll start with my first question. Now, Kevin, what inspired you, your journey into filmmaking, and how did you develop your unique visual storytelling approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, uh, I I have a film that's out right now, and the last screening that I attended was in Atlanta, and at all my screenings, I have a Q&A where the audience gets to ask me questions. And one of the individuals who watched the movie that evening was a friend of mine from high school, and they made a comment that they believe that they were there when my career started in high school. So they could walk back from today all the way back to high school where they believe that this instrumental thing happened where my career happened. And that was one of my favorite television shows back in the 90s was the Martin Lawrence show, Martin. And
Mm-hmm.
I loved it so much that one day I went back to school and I asked the teachers, I went to a private Christian school. I asked the principal if I could get some assembly time, when the school comes together and the teachers share, assembly. If I could get some time to do a scene from Martin. And so for whatever reason, they approved it. And I got my friends together. I played Martin. I got a Gina. I got, all the Cole, I got all the people together and we uh we did a parody. We basically just did a scene from the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably in grade 10, grade 9, so I was probably 14, 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved performance, acting, skits, putting things together for performance. So how did it start? Like, I would say it started in me a very long time ago, probably in high school, where I just love to see people's reactions. I love to bring people together. I love performance. And as I journeyed along, I continued to want more out of the skill. And so
Okay.
I wrote a few plays. I wrote a screenplay. I continue to write for other people for social media and their storytelling.
Mm.
So whether it's a commercial or a documentary, I have to be able to formulate the story to make it appealing to the viewership. And so
Okay.
I would say it started way back when I was in high.
So I think as you're talking there, it put my mind back to writing my dissertation. And in doing my dissertation, I decided that when I was done studying, I had to get it into the hands of the public because they are the ones who I wrote it for to help them on success strategies of leaders in the United States. So that was my thought. How can I get it into the hands? I can't use the same academic writing. to get it into their hands. They're going to find that pretty boring. People don't like school. So now that was my little challenge of converting that academic writing and
Right,
research into something that an end user would find appealing and how that can help their own personal growth and development. So
right.
thanks a lot for sharing that. As we progress further, do you write your own scripts, or do you adapt existing material? And how does
Yeah,
this process influence your directional choices?
yeah, so I do both. I have written many, so I've written again stage plays and I've written a script for a movie and but this last one I didn't write. So it's an interesting distinction
Okay.
between, writing your own and
Mm-hmm.
not writing your own and
Mm-hmm.
directing both. So when I when I wrote my own, actually, I don't want to go too far ahead. I don't want to share more than I
Mm-hmm.
should, but the question,
It's fine.
the,
It's
so I do
fine.
both.
Go ahead. Go,
No,
yes.
I do both. I do both. I write and I also can get into if it follows, my desire of where I do movies. Um, I also can get into somebody else's script.
Okay.
But that one is more of a collaborative effort.
Right. Okay. Okay. Perfect. I understand that. So, what elements of a written story do you find most compelling to translate to a screen? So, I'm thinking of it from the perspective and context of an author. As I said, we're looking at it from the context of the aspiring author or the authors who write and run. And there are more that they can get from it. So, from your perspective, what elements of the story do you find more compelling to translate into a screen to start that idea?
Mhm.
There's more.
Yeah,
But
I think the arc of the story has to be really good, and I'm really into human stories. So things that people can really relate to. So struggles that human beings have
mm-hmm,
that they might need help to deal with or get over. I really I feel touched and I feel moved to be able to um, get the emotional side of a story and send it out to the viewer. I'm more of a narrative, dramatic type of director. That's the genre that I really love. I'm not really
mm-hmm.
into sci-fi or horror or anything like that.
Right,
I'm
right,
more of
right.
a human story type, like, emotional, dramatic
Okay.
type of thing. So the story arc has to really be compelling. So when it reaches the point where the struggle meets its apex, it really has to be a compelling thing for me to really want to work on it from a human
So
perspective.
so I'm laughing a lot because I'm you're using some what it is cinematic jargon and stuff that's hey can everybody follow that? But I'm gonna take you back with me. I had actually reached out to you years ago because that's when I had finished my book. And my book took on several steps, several turns. So it started from the dissertation, then it went into the book, then it went into all the unusual stuff and a workbook. But from the context I was thinking more because I love documentaries. And I
Mhm,
reached out to you and said, Kevin, will you be able to translate this genesis of my book into something that for the non-reader basically that
mhm.
transform it? So you want to talk us through that process?
Yeah,
Where
sure.
if you remember the
Yeah,
process you went through.
yeah. And I'll just relate it to any other time that I've done documentaries for anybody else.
Right, right.
So, I mean, people think that a documentary is something where you just turn on the camera and the person talks, right? But really, really, it's not the case. There really has to be a strategy and a scripting to a documentary. And
Right.
you did the most of the work in terms of having the content completed and knowing where you want it to go. But in terms of storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with somebody who doesn't have any type of history or doesn't have any type of
Right.
connection. how do you grab the attention of the person who's scrolling
Exactly.
ever. So it has a lot of things like it visually. Okay,
Mm.
the setup. So when we filmed on the campus of
Nova Southeastern
Nova
University.
Southeastern. And so that's a beautiful campus. We made sure that we got the greenery, and
Hmm.
the setting was very nice, right?
Hmm.
And then once it's visually appealing, then it matters how you start. So I imagine that we started with something that was interesting. So you didn't just like say, "Hi, my name is Dr. Shelly Cameron," da 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 da. Da. You probably said something interesting and to grab the attention, and then you start telling the story. You walk down the story of whatever the topic was, and you start building it. So, like my background is English, right? So
Right.
in every story there is the elements of plot, right? Even if it's a documentary, you still
Right.
follow the elements, right? So you have your exposition, you have your rising action, your climax, falling action, and then your denouement, which is your resolution. And so whatever it is, it can follow that format, and it's important for that to happen. So when I am filming and also directing, I can also help the person say, okay, maybe try to say this way instead of saying it
Right.
that way, right? Um, when you say this, make sure you're looking over here.
Yeah.
There's lots of different elements that
Right.
techniques that I've learned over the years to
Right.
help make a story be more compelling.
Right. I remember even me doing mine, and you made my story come alive because you dropped some stuff in it. You asked me some stuff. You also asked me to invite others to speak in the video as well. So it took on a completely different turn than I was just tunnel vision,
Mhm,
anticipating. But actually, that's the outcome that I expected. But I didn't
mhm.
know how to translate that. And that's the reason why I go to professionals, because when I don't know how to do something, that's the job of a professional. I don't need to know everything.
Right.
The professional knows, can take my
Right.
story and turning it into what my perceived outcome would be, and of course, make it even better
Yeah.
and full.
Yeah.
So, as I said, that's the reason why I wanted to chat with you to share with authors the next step of what they can do beyond just writing and running.
Mm.
Um, so my next question is a follow-up to that question, and it is, what challenges arise? What challenge have you experienced in throughout the career? Basically, with what you're doing.
Yeah. One of the challenges is always funding. Funding is always a challenge.
Okay.
Um, and from a writing perspective, I think that's what your viewership will be most interested in is, and I'll go back to writing my script versus directing somebody else's script. When I write, I have all of the imagery and all of the storyline. I have all the character development in my mind and also on,
Mm-hmm.
so I know how the character should turn, blink, every little thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
when it's somebody else's script, it is much more difficult to get into the mind and the intent of the original writer. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's much more difficult work to
Mm-hmm.
do somebody else's script, especially when you're a writer yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I found myself for this movie, collaborating a lot with the writer and
Exactly.
asking
Yes.
questions
Yes. But
and what were
it's
you
together
thinking?
work,
What
right?
was your intention?
Yes.
So all of that stuff so that I could bring it out
Mhm.
to its best ability and to its truest authenticity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So those
That's
things
all.
are difficult.
Right. And that really stands for something. So it would tell an author who has written a book, a novel, and want to turn it into a movie, for example. This is how you would work with that person, and this is how you can elevate, or I don't know, is it elevator, de-escalator,
Yeah,
whatever
I
it is,
mean, it's
certain
all of that.
points.
It's all of that
Okay.
because, yeah, some of the stuff like, so the writer may not necessarily know what's best for the screen. So,
Mhm.
So that's where the director comes into play, where there may be we may have to change some things, but
Mhm.
still holding the integrity of the story and the script.
Exactly, exactly. So they wouldn't have to have any fear that
Right.
the story is going to change.
Right.
And I will share a little bit about the 50 Shades of Grey.
Hmm.
That 50 Shades of Grey movie. It was a movie, but no, most people didn't know that it was a book
Book.
before. It was
Hmm.
actually a book before it became a movie. And it was also that writer, when she wrote it, she her book was not accepted by traditional publishers. Why? Simply because they didn't think that she had the talent.
Hmm.
And she just went ahead and decided to self-publish it herself. And she did everything professionally, cover everything. And it went out there. And of course, the rest is history. So
Hmm.
she went behind the scenes doing it the other way around, showed it to
Hmm.
them. And of course, she had traditional publishers running after her. And
Hmm.
then it turned into a movie. And then the public loved it so much that it was a follow-up and all kind of stuff. So those are the things that happen when authors listen and have that desire to go further with
Yeah.
their writing.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know when something that you have in your mind will resonate with the
Mhm.
population. You just never know. So the best thing to do is to get it out of your head.
Well, I'm going to ask you another question. How do you balance staying true to original source material while creating something that works cinematically for audiences who may not be familiar with an author's book?
Yeah, I think it's important for me to accept projects that I know that I can tell the story well on screen.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that the challenge of not being able to relate back to the story, there won't be that challenge.
Hmm.
I just won't accept everything. Like
Right,
I
right,
have to, my
right,
skill set
right,
has to
right,
be able to collaborate with the story that I'm reading.
right.
So the script that I get. So
Hmm.
I personally are not just going to direct any type of genre.
Hmm.
It has to be in my skill set so that I won't have those problems.
Right, right. And I think that that's true of any business and as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. It's not
Mhm.
everything. All of our values differ. So
Right.
we won't accept every project. Of course, sometimes you get desperate, but desperation is not necessarily a good thing because I've always said that desperation is not a good thing because you compromise your values and end
Exactly.
up going against what your core
Yeah.
again values are. So the other question I want to ask is, what collaborative approach do you prefer when working with authors?
Yeah, so I love to meet a lot. So I really want to get into the mind of the writer, and I really
Mm-hmm.
want to understand because I know again, when you're writing, you have the imagery. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to get in your head and I want
Mm-hmm.
to know, all the nuances of
Mm-hmm.
what you're thinking so I can fully
Mm-hmm.
understand. So I would say, in-person meetings, Zoom meetings,
Mm-hmm.
conversations on the phone. It has to
Mm-hmm.
be an open door of communication and collaboration for
Mm-hmm.
for the project to really turn out well. Because again, it's difficult to direct somebody else's script unless
Mm-hmm.
I immerse myself
Mm-hmm.
and really put all my effort into understanding and knowing all the information of the script.
Mhm. That's understandable. Thank you for sharing that. Are there is there anything else that you'd like to share as we wind down? What would you expect? What is your process? What do you expect from a prospective author? If you're going to, who would reach out to you, let's say doing a documentary or a short film, what are your expectations from them?
Yeah, so if somebody has a book,
Mm-hmm.
an author has written a book, and then maybe they want to help promote their book,
Mm-hmm.
um, um,
Okay.
very good, a very good idea to bring your book to life in a short
Mm-hmm.
video.
Okay.
It could be as big as, creating some sort of, 2, 3 minute scene
Right.
It could be a, depending on the genre of your book, right?
Hmm.
Or it could be interview style.
Okay.
Could be documentary style where you have a few people talking about the
Hmm.
subject matter, but bringing your book to life through video is an excellent way to market your book. So I would just take them through my process of, speaking with them, getting to know the topic, and sharing with them my ideas of what we could do
Hmm.
to bring it out and to help market the book. And we just go through that process, step by step, just like with you. We talked about your intentions. I gave my
Hmm.
ideas of what we could do visually,
Hmm.
and then we just have our shoot day, and then I put it together, and you'll be happy with what you have.
I like that. Perfect way to conclude this conversation. But are there any, how can they find you? Anything last that you'd want to share? How can people find if they want to reach out to you for your help, for help?
Yeah, so my Instagram is KC Films Media. So my name, KC Films
Okay.
S Media, and I'm KC Films Media on all platforms, well, Facebook and Instagram. Um, and my website is kcfilmsmedia.com.
Okay. And you also have, at the outset, you had mentioned about a film that you have done. I know, is it just the first film?
Yeah,
If they want to see a little taste of what you can do, where would they find it,
yeah.
look for it, to get a little taste.
For sure. So the movie's called For His Name's Sake, and it's on tour right now. I've been to 10 cities, and the next stop is Cleveland, Ohio in June. And
Mhm.
we're going to many other cities, and it will eventually be streamed on a platform or one or two platforms, so the
Mhm.
general public can see it. But you can go to my website for the movie, which is forhisnamesake.movie.com. So forhisnamesake.movie.com to
For
see the
his
trailer.
namesake movie.com.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Kevin,
Thank you,
for
Doc.
sharing that, for
For sure.
sharing the thoughts on how authors can step out and get into different areas, different forms of their book. Thank you very much for sharing again and again and again. I'll say that. And I'm Dr. Shelly Cameron, and I love talking with persons like yourself, Kevin, just to help to educate the personal growth of other persons. So thank you, audience, for listening in, and I hope you got something. Reach out to Kevin so you can turn your work into reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
You're welcome.